Hey there, Mr. Redder here. Welcome back to another episode of r/Entitled People Stories. Our first story we'll be reading today. My boyfriend played video games the whole night, so I left. After that, guy decided to scam me. Revenge is still pouring in on him. And after that, husband is trying to financially edge me out of my expensive hobby. Now for every thumbs up this video gets, one Karen does not get to play video games.
But I just got Elden Ring, bruh.
So please smash that like button and subscribe and turn on notifications for new stories from Reddit every single day. My boyfriend played video games the whole night, so I left. So I'm 29, female, and my boyfriend is 30. He's a gamer. And don't get me wrong, I play video games myself and really enjoy spending my time playing video games. But since my boyfriend lives quite far away, we only see each other once a week. That's our quality time together. Yesterday, I worked the whole day, went to the gym, and then drove over to my boyfriend's house. I arrived there at 7-ish. When I came in, he was playing video games with his friends. No biggie. I told him I'm gonna take a shower and be right out. When I came back, he wasn't playing anymore, and instead asked if I'm hungry and wanted to order some food. I thought he stopped playing and we're gonna spend some time together now. But no, he ordered food and went right back to gaming. At about 9-ish, our food arrived. He was still playing. Fixed myself a plate, sat down to eat. He didn't join me. After I finished, I just got my stuff and told him I'm gonna leave because I'm not spending my evening watching him play video games. He finally took off his headset and told me, "Well, you could have said something. I was about to stop anyways." I told him that I feel like it's common sense to not be playing video games when your girlfriend visits you and left. I was there for 2 hours and the whole time he was playing. He hasn't tried to contact me in any way since. When I left, it looked like he was super upset, but he immediately started talking to his friends again before I was even out the door. And to be honest, I didn't feel like a jerk then, and I don't feel like one now. But the more I talk to my friends about it, the more I feel like I should have said something. Maybe to some people it's not obvious that someone wouldn't want to watch them play video games the whole night. I mean, it should be, but maybe it isn't. Not the jerk. See, with me, I'm the gamer and my boyfriend isn't. Playing video games and talking to your friends while your girlfriend sits next to you waiting for you to finally notice her, that's a major jerk move. Good on you, you left. Hope you had a nice evening without him. And somehow, whenever you say something about someone's gaming habits, it's always, "Well, I was about to turn it off anyways." Not the jerk. It's common sense to stop playing video games when someone comes over to visit. That's just basic respect. And yes, some games can't be paused. Well, bad luck. Then finish the round and turn off the console. Or time manage and don't start another round if you know your girlfriend's gonna be here in a few. Well, who do you think is the jerk? OP or her boyfriend? Please let us know.
What kind of dude would rather play video games than hang out with his girlfriend?
Guy decided to scam me. Revenge is still pouring on him. First and foremost, this didn't happen in the US. Some events might be pursuable up there, but down here, it was mostly no man's land regarding the kind of scams I fell for. For the sake of this story, here in no man's land, we use the top-level domain, NML. My wife is a nurse. Back then, in the early 2000s, she worked in an ICU of a relatively exclusive and therefore expensive hospital. Specifically, she had to care for patients that had undergone cardiac surgery. At the same time, I was working for a small company that was going out of business. The owners were retiring. We hadn't secured any important contracts lately, and in my country, you have to pay for employee severance unless you file for bankruptcy. So they decided to shut down while they still had enough cash to pay our severances. One day, my wife calls me and tells me about this gentleman in his late 50s that had been on the verge of passing. And after that close call, he was so grateful and stuff. We'll call him Benny Lowy. This gentleman happened to work in electronic imports, which gave him access to incredibly convenient deals. Long story short, he was so grateful he could sell us an LCD TV, a store demo unit that had been used just once, and we'd need to pay like 1/4 of its retail price, as long as we kept it quiet because he was risking his relation with the brand. It caught me off guard. I said yes and she paid. Anyway, the only TV in the house had been a wedding present and weighed over 100 pounds. We were eager to replace it. I was naive, I know, but I thought, being her patient, she knew all the personal data from this guy, so it seemed unlikely he would target her for a scam. His father was a known businessman. Now retired and approaching his 80s, Mr. Lowy Sr. was well respected in his community and wouldn't have let his son wreak havoc. Also, my wife had acquaintances in common with Benny's brother, a known doctor of another hospital. Christmas was approaching. She asked Benny, who had been already discharged and back home, for advice regarding the present she wanted to give me, a phone. He hooked her up with the best she could think of. Now, I can't remember the exact model, but it was the Sony Ericsson flagship, and it wasn't yet offered by local carriers. He had access to it because of his status as a local representative for said brand. She went with it and paid. The job position. I've said my employer was shutting down, so just for the sake of it, she asked Benny if he knew of someone needing an IT guy. Of course, he said. I'll meet your husband at this place tomorrow, etc. And there I was, in a gas station, uptown. He pulled over in a luxury car. Mr. Lowy was a normal-looking guy, used a cane, and had a noticeable knee or hip pain. We sat down in the gas station coffee shop, and he told me about a mid-management position, reporting to him in a mining company I had barely heard about. He coached me on what should I say in the upcoming job interview. We spoke about salary. I was dazzled. Wait, mining? Didn't you say he was into imports? He was that kind of guy you can't pause to question because he had already thrown something extra to the mix, and this position had a better paycheck than the one I was being laid off. In the next days, we had a few phone calls. Stuff looked promising. I had been already laid off. We agreed he'd pick me up on December 24th, and he had introduced me to senior managers as the recommended help desk junior manager. I woke up extra early, put on my best suit, waited in the front yard. Hours went by. I had planned to be back before noon to arrange stuff for that night's dinner because my parents were coming over. After calling him repeatedly, he told me he had been assaulted and robbed. "They took my cane and broke it on my knee," he wailed. Poor guy. I told him to forget about my interview for the time being. No, I promised you. I'll make it up to you." Of course, since he had been injured, he wasn't able to deliver the items my wife bought from him. That night, my mother asked me about the new job. I could not bring myself to tell her about the delay. I told her it was going fine. That night, I Googled him. Nothing showed up except for some awards in the Imports and Customs Associations of whatever. He called me to reschedule our interview, December 31st. Again, picture me in my best suit outside the house on a summer morning. Of course, he didn't show up. When I finally reach him, he tells me that, when his car had been stolen last week, they took his wallet too, which these jerks eventually dropped during another robbery, so now he had been detained as a suspect for that. He hadn't been able to pick the imported electronics on the customs office, so they had them moved to another custody unit where it would take a couple of weeks to retrieve. That night, we went to my parents for New Year's Eve, and my mother asked me for the new job. "It's all fine," I said. I Google him again, this time with variations regarding his name or the supposed company he was setting me into. Not much showed up, nothing shady. The next call was like a week later. He told me that, because he was being involved in a police investigation, this mining company had fired him. But this was actually good, because now I was going to be interviewed to take his position as IT manager. This meant double my former paycheck and securing a position that would be a leap forward in my career. So I don't ask many questions. I was just grateful. All those delays in the end would pay off. This situation, as you have already figured out, went on and on for weeks. My interview never happened. The electronics never arrived. We had lost our money, our time, our Christmas, our hopes, and I was still unemployed and hadn't been applying for job offers since I had this one allegedly secured. I texted him somewhere in between. I texted him, "Why are you doing this to us?" He texted back, "If I wanted to, you have nothing on me. But if you stick with me, you'll be rewarded tenfold." Cue in the detective. Time went by. Eventually, my wife overhears from a coworker about this patient in another hospital she was working at. Some nurses do work part-time at other hospitals. She had fallen for it too, but her husband was a detective. So a few hours later, we were filling him in on the details of the scam we fell for. Asking around, he found a third nurse scammed by this guy. Soon enough, he was detained, this time for real, and admitted to scamming people due to an impromptu invented mild dementia. This detective talks him into an off-court deal in which he gave us back every cent, but not my time nor hopes, in exchange for us not pursuing any legal action. This was a decent deal because us, having failed to make a written agreement on any of these purchases, had at most a weak claim to our money. By the way, the money with which he paid us, he had to borrow from his father and some from his brother, the doctor. Remember, this didn't happen in the US. This agreement is actually completely legal down here. So I made a blog. I couldn't go for any further legal action, but there wasn't a non-disclosure agreement whatsoever. And I thought, What could prevent other people from falling into this scammer's lies? Well, perhaps some Google results. So I created a blog on WordPress. It was a single post in third person telling my story. In the following days, that post's comments had a dozen stories much like mine. I made them into posts. A few of them got their comments too, telling other people's stories. In a few weeks, looking for Benny Lowey's name on Google led to this blog. In my country, you can review updates regarding court ongoing cases, except for felonies that are non-public. Searching for his national ID, which I had known thanks to our settlement, as the sued party, I could just find an eviction action due to failing to pay his condo's lease. But looking for him as the suing part, I found out he had sued WordPress.nml, our local fictionary domain, which was registered by a local guy on GoDaddy.com. Following up with this case, this guy had spent months trying to demonstrate this local guy had to take down the blog I made on the domain. Go figure. I was tempted then and there to set a post on this blog saying, "If I wanted to, you have nothing on me." However, I have never attempted to let him know who's doing this. I just log in on the blog once in a while. Today was the first one in years, and keep finding, in the comments, more scammed people. All of them in a vulnerable moment of their life. Unemployed guys, small startups looking for an angel investor, small branch salespeople pursuing a promising commission. Those who have, in time, reached a compensation or agreement. It's because Benny's now ancient father had to chip in. From what they say, his brother has gone no contact. Most of the commenters leave their email addresses, and I've known of a few that have teamed with each other and succeeded in legal actions. Husband trying to financially edge me out of my expensive hobby. The backstory. My husband and I have always had joint accounts, and up until last year when our third kid was born, we made about the same amount of money. We made the decision that I would leave my full-time job and work PRN so we could avoid the cost of daycare. This has cut my income in half. In addition, last year my husband started running a successful eBay store. He opened a separate account that I have no access to at all, and he started taking extra money from his paychecks each week and depositing it into that account as well. He uses that money on whatever he wants. I manage our finances, budget, and pay all of our bills. I don't have a separate personal account, so all of my money is poured into our mutual accounts, and he can see all of my spending. I keep spreadsheets that he has full access to but never looks at. We have savings and basically no debt aside from a mortgage and my student loans. And now, I'm a very active jiu-jitsu competitor and go to tournaments frequently. I would probably call Brazilian jiu-jitsu an expensive hobby. The last few weeks, several entry fees came due at once, totaling close to $600. I've always cleared it with him that I'm going to do a certain tournament before I sign up, and then I build the fees into the budget. This was no different. And other than jiu-jitsu, I don't really spend money on anything else. He texted me while I was at work yesterday saying, "Not really happy about your excessive spending recently. I think you should get your own account with an allowance to pay for this stuff." This was shocking to me because this has never been a problem until yesterday, and I've never spent so much money on Brazilian jiu-jitsu that we can't save or pay our bills. Then he told me that he bought a car a few weeks ago with his personal funds. I feel like he's trying to control me and financially edge me out of my hobby that he knows I love. I can give myself an allowance out of each of my paychecks, but I make a lot less money than him, and pretty much all of it goes to bills, so it would take me longer to save for each tournament, and I would have to do way fewer per year. If I want to do jiu-jitsu, I have to rely financially on him to do so. And again, it's never been a problem until yesterday, because up until last year, I made just as much money as him. Our mutual decision for me to leave my job only affects my paycheck. He can spend money on whatever he wants, like a car, without any oversight or accountability because he has his eBay store that he makes money from each month. He never tells me, but I'd say it's probably about $1,000 a month. Anyway, it started a big fight. He said he doesn't have to rely on me financially for his hobbies, so I shouldn't have to rely on him financially for mine. That our mutual money should go to bills and the kids only. Who's the jerk? Not the jerk. I would be hightailing it back to full-time work, and he can start contributing to daycare for the kids if he suddenly thinks your quality of life should diminish with your income. Your contribution to the household is far more than just the dollars and cents, but if he's trying to make it about the raw numbers, things aren't going right and you need to protect yourself. Until his day job is allowing him to conduct his eBay business during his work hours, his side hustle is costing your family, so he can't just claim it's his to keep. Well, who do you think is the jerk? OP or her husband? Please let us know. Am I the jerk for telling my grandparents that my parents kicked me out? I'm 18, male. A few weeks ago it was my birthday and I turned 18. As soon as I turned 18, at midnight, while I was sleeping in my room, my dad knocked on the door, turned the lights on, pulled my blanket off, and told me to get up and get out of my house now that you're 18. I already knew I was going to be kicked out at 18, as my mom and dad often mentioned to me in the house, "When you're 18, you're out of the house." Or they'd say something like, "I can't wait till your mother and I get some alone and quiet time when you leave the house at 18. They already had plans to kick me out before anyways, so I already knew it. But I wasn't worried, as I have a good/decent savings amount of $5,000 I earned from freelancing on the side. And ever since I turned 18, I've been making a decent income as well as working full-time now. I can afford an apartment in my area and essentials and some nice stuff as well. So that day that I got kicked out, I packed all my stuff in a suitcase. I left, I slept the night at my friend's house, woke up, and same day I arranged an apartment through a landlord I know personally. Now I have my own apartment and I'm living by myself. Today I had a group FaceTime call where my grandparents, aunt, uncle, mom, dad, etc. were all on the FaceTime call. My grandpa asks, "So, OP, your father told me you moved out right now to attend college. Which college are you attending?" I told my grandpa, "No, I didn't move out to attend college. I moved out because I was kicked out." My grandpa's face immediately turned from a happy, smiling face to an angry, shocked face, and he basically went off on my mom and dad. Man said words that I've never heard of before. He scolded my parents for like 2 hours live on FaceTime with all of our relatives on the group FaceTime call. After the group FaceTime ended, my mom and dad gave me a call personally, and they were mad. They said, "Never before has your grandpa insulted us. Today he did because of you, jerk." So, am I the jerk for telling my grandparents that I got kicked out? Not the jerk. Who does this to their own kid on their 18th birthday? They lied because they knew how their actions would look to others. If they were embarrassed, then they only have themselves to blame. I'm glad you told your grandparents the truth, and I'm so sorry that your 18th birthday was so rubbish. Hopefully you can celebrate your birthday as well as leaving your parents behind with your friends soon. That's if you haven't already. Am I the jerk for taking my baby to see my family against my wife's wishes? We came home from the hospital 5 weeks ago with our firstborn, a boy. For the next 4 weeks, my wife did not let any of my family visit our son. Her mother and sister came over several times a week. My wife refuses to let my family see him because she doesn't want to play host. My family understands that being a new mom is stressful and they have no expectations of being treated like proper guests. I told her it's not fair that her family can come and go as they please, but my family can't even meet him. She said her family comes over to help her, which is not really true. They just hold the baby a little, and if the baby isn't sleeping, then I'm the one taking care of him while they're here. They don't clean or anything. At most, they might bring some takeout on the way over. Finally, I decided I will be taking the baby to see my parents last weekend. I got all the formula and diapers and everything I would need for a couple days and packed a bag. I thought this was a win-win because my wife could have some time to herself or come along and she would be under no pressure to host anyone. But she got mad when I told her what I would do, but I told her this was happening. I am the baby's father and my family has a right to see him just as much as hers. She refused to come along and said she can't believe I'm treating a new mother this way. I left on Friday evening and didn't hear anything from my wife on Saturday, but her sister and mom were over and sent a bunch of texts basically accusing me of mistreating her. Finally, on Sunday, she started sending me text after text on how I was a terrible husband, how I had taken her son, how a baby can't be separated from its mother, etc. It got so bad that I cut my visit short and drove home. She was very mad when I got home and refused to speak to me. The next day, when the baby was asleep, I set her down and tried to calmly explain to her that I am the father of the baby, so I have as much right to where he goes and who he sees as she does. We are equal parents, and she needs to accept reasonable compromises when we disagree, like my family being able to see our son and she not having to host them. She called me a jerk and shouted that she gets more say because she's the one who is pregnant with him. At that point, I said if she thinks that way and the accusation she texted me, I think she really needs to see a doctor and get assessed for PPD because her behavior is not normal. She called me a jerk and said I was mistreating my position as the earner. Money was never part of any discussion. She has been giving me a near-silent treatment all week, resisting any attempts to discuss therapy, and her sister has texted me saying I should apologize to her for what I said. I told her sister that I had said absolutely nothing wrong in response to being accused of taking the baby and being a lesser parent to my son. I'm standing my ground, but I need an outside perspective. Am I the jerk? Edit. To clarify, the idea my wife might have PPD did not occur to me until after the visit with my family. Edit 2. My wife knew of my plan to visit my family several days in advance. I planned a weekend trip because they are several hours away. Edit 3. I want to emphasize this because people keep asking about it. I did not want to separate my son from his mother. I wanted her to come with us. She refused. I did not forcibly take him away from her. It was her decision not to come along and her decision not to allow my family to come to her. Edit 4. My wife is not physically handicapped from childbirth. She's been mobile and going out, including a 6-hour car ride 2 weeks ago. Edit 5. My wife refused any options involving my family coming over. No hotels or in-town visits. An overnight visit to your family's home, over her objections as well, is very different from her family coming to visit for a few hours. You can easily imagine how your equivalency argument would be perceived by a judge if it got to that point. The more reasonable compromise was to invite your family over to a porch visit, for which you'd prepare all snacks, etc., and give your wife notice so she can plan to A. Stay inside, B. Be elsewhere, or C. Join in on the visit. You have equal say in who is invited onto the property. That would have made a more defensible compromise than taking the infant out of the home overnight and away from the mother. You're the jerk. OP. She did not want them in town or at the house at all. This was emphasized in my repeated attempts to compromise with her. She felt that no matter what, if they were close, she would have to host. Why is everyone acting like she doesn't have a right to feel how she feels about the in-laws? They aren't her parents. Therefore, she will never be as comfortable with them as she is with hers. And she's at the weakest point of her life right now, trying to heal. Edit. I just don't believe this guy is telling the truth. He has some kind of excuse or situation as an answer to any and all objections. An insane amount of, oh, well, she did this, so that makes this okay, replies to even seem like a real situation at this point. He took the baby away from her. She never did that to him. There are clearly 3 sides to this story. His, hers, and the truth. Everyone sucks here. Unless there's more to this story, wife's stance is either irrational or unreasonable. That said, husband's decision to whisk the baby away for multiple days instead of perhaps a day or at most an overnight trip without wife's consent is also unreasonable in my opinion. Comment about needing to see a therapist may have been well-intentioned but didn't come across that way. Therapists or lawyers, the husband or wife are going to be talking to one, the other, or both soon. Well, who do you think is the jerk? OP or his wife? Please let us know.
Either she is totally unwilling to compromise, or there's more to this story than we're being told.
Am I the jerk for telling my daughter she has to pay $200 a month extra rent, or I'll kick her out after she made me lose my bonus? I, 53 female, have a daughter, Maisie, who's 23, who lives with me. For my work, I'm a manager at a fast food chain that I've worked at for 31 years. Due to my long time with the company, I was awarded an extra $200 bonus if my shop took enough money and I know the owner well. However, I was asked by him not to tell anyone about the bonus, or he would have to take it away, as everyone else would demand the same. I agreed to this and said I wouldn't tell anyone, and I didn't. I'm on good terms with him and we follow each other on social media, so I refrained from telling Maisie as she can't keep secrets well. But last month, around a year after I got the bonus, my daughter found out that I had managed to pay off a credit card and wanted to know how, as I didn't think I'd pay it off for another year. I told her the interest had gone down, but she didn't believe me and kept pestering me about it for days. I finally told her I would tell her if she wouldn't tell anyone else, so I told her I got a raise at work. Despite having the bonus for a year, my daughter wanted to get dinner to celebrate, so we went to her favorite restaurant, which is quite pricey. She took a picture of our meals and tagged me on the Facebook with the caption, "Mom got a pay raise, money emojis," which in her words, she thought nobody would notice, as nobody uses Facebook anymore. Sadly, I didn't notice until the morning after, but the damage was already done. The owner called me into his office and was very sincere when he told me he couldn't give me the bonus anymore, as a colleague had complained having seen the post. I also apologized, saying I kept it a secret as long as I could, as I know my daughter can't keep secrets well. When I got home, I demanded her to remove the post and told her she lost me $200 a month. She felt bad, but she told me it wasn't her fault, as I didn't tell her the full extent of the pay raise and how it was so much money. I told her that unless she starts paying me $200 a month extra, that she will have to find somewhere else to live to make up for it. My oldest, Mia, who's 26, thinks I'm being harsh on her and that it was my fault for telling her, as I know what she's like. However, my daughter pays $200 a month rent and spends the rest of her money on luxury items like expensive bags, perfume, and makeup. I'm not demanding she pay an unreasonable amount. If anything, $400 a month is incredibly cheap compared to other house prices. Am I the jerk for demanding my daughter pay $200 a month extra rent, or I'll kick her out? Your boss is the jerk for making the bonus so secret and conditional, and for removing it like that. I don't know if that's normal in the kind of industry you're in or the country, but in mine, that would be illegal actually. I don't know why you're focusing more on your kid than on the unfair labor practice. Yes, she was wrong for posting if you told her not to do so, and sure, charge her what she cost you. But she's not the villain in my eyes, nor are you. Not the jerk. Also, it's literally illegal in the US, federally illegal, to forbid employees from discussing their wages with their coworkers and/or to penalize them for doing so. You can literally take it to the Department of Labor and they will probably either get your pay reinstated or get you a settlement. Am I the jerk for not giving my brother half of the house and business? I'm 38, male. My parents passed when I was 23, and my little brother, Adam, who's 27, was 12. He inherited my parents' money in an account with me as payee until he turned 18, but he asked me to manage the account for him after that. It paid for his needs until he graduated and got a job in 2016, and it said until 2020. I inherited the house, the family business, and massive debt. I planned to sell the business and house and move him in to live with me, but Adam had a massive meltdown, and the therapist I sent him to insisted he needed to be close to friends, even though we had no other family there and my entire life was in another country. Against my better judgment, I moved 4,800 kilometers back home. I quit my old job and broke my lease, tried to maintain a long-distance relationship with my girlfriend at the time, juggling my parents' business and trying to pay for a house with most of the mortgage left all by myself. I started dating Emily, now 34, when Adam was 16, and when he moved for college, he gave Emily his blessing to move in with me. We got married when Adam was 21, and we are expecting our first kid. Emily helps me run the business, which barely survived 2020. The house is paid off, and I'm starting to turn a small profit again. In 2020, Adam lost his job, and I gave him the rest of his money in his account to support himself, and he asked me to handle the bills. Every month, I'd send him some food money and let him know his updated balance. He doesn't have enough to pay for the remainder of his lease, October, and I warned him in January that Emily and I can't afford to support him. I gave him two options: get a job and pay his rent, and I'd pay his food bill, or move home and live with us for free while working for the family business. He lost it, saying that it was my fault for sacrificing my life for the business and the house, and that he shouldn't have to give up his life since I was supposed to take care of him. I told him I gave up my entire life for him, and I struggled to keep the house and the business alive because he wanted me to. So I don't have cash to spare to support him because I have employees and a baby on the way. He insisted I sell the house and business and give him his half, and I reminded him that those were my part of the inheritance, not his, that I paid most of the mortgage and I kept the business alive, and I didn't want to give up everything I worked for. Our grandparents, mom's parents, late 80s I think, are the only living relatives we have. They live in a territory overseas and refuse to take Adam or help us because my parents didn't leave them anything. So I was stunned when I received an angry phone call from my grandma calling me a greedy jerk and telling me I should be taking better care of my little brother. I reminded her that he's 27 and needs to get a job and take care of himself, and I let her know that I offered him both a home and a job with me, and he said no. Not the jerk. If grandma is that concerned that her grown grandson needs to be taken care of, she's free to take him in and finance his life. You've done your part, and now it's time for him to grow up and do his. Not the jerk. Your brother is 27 now. You did the best you could to take care of him, but he's an adult. The only thing you've done wrong is continuing to take care of him for so long. I understand because he's your little brother, but you're his older brother, not his parent. It's time for him to start doing things for himself and to stop expecting you to do everything for him. Am I the jerk for losing it after finding out my wife let her sister and her boyfriend stay at my late wife's cabin? My late wife, while she was still with us, lived a healthy life and always loved spending time traveling and going on road trips. She was always an outdoor person, although she had a demanding career. She had a high-paying job while I was earning money that barely paid for bills. We were married for 5 years. We bought a cabin together that we used for holidays and weekends. After her passing, I couldn't set a foot in it for a whole year. Everything was the way she had left it. I don't go there often, but only on big occasions when I need to feel closer to her. My family suggested I sell it, but I couldn't bring myself to do that. The idea of selling it makes me feel like I was losing her all over again, so I left it as it is. I married my now wife 6 months ago. I have 2 stepkids that are filling my days with joy and comfort. But lately, my in-laws have been having issues, specifically my sister-in-law. She lost her job, and she and her boyfriend had nowhere to live. We've invited them to our place for 2 months, then my brother-in-law took them in. My wife, days ago, told me brother-in-law had an argument with his sister and kicked her and boyfriend out. I asked when that happened, and she told me about 2 weeks ago. I then asked where her sister and her boyfriend were staying, and she took her time to answer. I asked what's wrong, and she flat out told me that her sister's been staying at my late wife's cabin for 2 weeks now. I was stunned when I heard, and I asked her for more clarification. She said she gave her sister a copy of the key to the cabin to stay there till she finds a job. Then proceeded to say she didn't tell me because it wasn't a huge deal. I couldn't help but lose my temper. I told her she had no right to hide this from me and let her sister into the cabin knowing how I'd feel about it. She said my reaction was the exact reason why she hid it from me. I called her selfish and inconsiderate of my feelings, but she argued about wanting to help her younger sister and said I was the selfish one for not helping family during tough times. The kids walked into the kitchen. I just stopped arguing and walked out. My wife followed me. I demanded she call her sister and tell her to move out and hand over the key. My wife looked shocked, saying she expected me to react this way, but not go as far as to demand that her sister moves out, and called me cruel for making her look bad to family. We kept arguing till her sister moved out and brought the key. My wife packed her things and went to stay with her parents. She told me that my late wife was obviously more important to me than my family and that she won't come home till I get my priorities straight. I haven't visited the cabin after her sister left. I haven't been feeling well these days, and I'm not ready to go see how the place looks now. I just need time to calm myself down to be able to go there. My wife is at her parents' house, and she took the kids with her. I miss the kids, and she won't let me speak to them, which is another problem because my heart literally feels heavy when I'm away from them. I miss them so much and can't stand the house without them there.
Support our channel by joining as a member today, and we'll give you a shout out in our next video.
Or come watch this video next. You won't believe what Karen does in that one.